all together here for what will be a group therapy session on startup mistakes. I'm Scott Austin with the Wall Street Journal. Thanks so much for joining us, and welcome panelists. I've been covering startups for more than a decade, and I think founders sometimes want to make it seem like, or at least the appearance, that they're crushing it, that they're killing it. And it is nice sometimes to step back, to open up, to reveal the issues that all founders go through. And your startup is going to be different, but I think it'll be somewhat humbling to hear about some issues, especially in the early days, when you're a founder, when things can just go haywire, and to talk through some of these mistakes. So we're going to try to attempt that here in the next 30 minutes, and thanks so much for joining us. I think we'll start with the team, because it's probably the thing that founders really spend the most time on, whether it's financially or just most of your time trying to accommodate your team. So think back to the earlier days. It's probably not that long ago. And when you're talking about hiring, when you're talking about even firing or retaining employees, what was a mistake? What was something that didn't go right? And I'll start with you, Naomi, since you're right next to me here.
Sure. So I think that one of the biggest mistakes I made in the early days was that I wanted to accommodate my employees a lot. And when you're overly accommodating your employees, it's a give and a take. And when you do that, you realize that over time, they're going to keep asking for a lot of accommodation when you have that kind of relationship with your employee. And you kind of want your employees to step up. Mm-hmm. And so that was my biggest mistake. It was my own mistake, not theirs, that I was overly accommodating to them. And now I kind of just want them to be more of an equal or even better than me, really.
And what would you say when you talk about accommodating them? What were some of the things that you might have done that didn't necessarily work out?
So when I was hiring, I would have to train from scratch, and I would overly explain how to do the job, maybe. Whereas I want somebody who can think on their feet a little bit more. So now sometimes I might ask questions like, what would you do in this case? And I want to get that feedback. Mm-hmm. I want somebody who's a go-getter. And sometimes when you're teaching everything from scratch from the beginning, it's good to do that initially. But as time goes on, if you see that the growth is kind of stunted, that's because you're overly accommodating your employees. You have to have them bring their talents and their light to you, into your company.
Right. Now, Optimus, tell me, because I know we talked a little bit about when you were hiring, whether it's you hire for the smarts. You basically hire the people that are the most talented, coming out of universities. The best engineers may not be the best plan. Tell me about your experience.
Yeah. No, at a high level, I think this panel is excellent, because when I went to panels like this, everyone talks about their success as an inevitable narrative, and it isn't. And it's in retrospect, you can make all of this sound brilliant and like you planned it, but it's never really like that. So at Zumper in the seed stage, we hired for IQ originally. We just kind of looked at people's resumes and kind of saw their backgrounds, and we never asked the question of is this person a cultural fit? Will they be with us in kind of 3, 4, 5 years time? Are they the kind of person who can have the worst week of all time in terms of their numbers and come in on a Monday and kind of be ready to go again? And so I think the lesson we took out of kind of early stage at Zumper was hiring for IQ or kind of ability is table stakes, and that should get you to your final interviews. And then after that, you're hiring for abilities, whether they kind of complement you or whether it's something that you want in your company that you aren't able to bring as the CEO. So I think it's an obvious kind of thing to say now, but in the first year we just took smart people. That isn't, in retrospect, the right idea. Now, smarts get you in the door, but you spend a lot more time understanding kind of the person and the human being that you're bringing on board.
So how would you describe your culture? Because it is very different at different companies.
Totally. So Zumper is an apartment search company. A lot of our kind of board metrics are about consumer usage. We have 5 million users a month. month, but on a month-to-month basis, it's very volatile because a lot of them are organic. So I think resilience. So I think someone who has that intrinsic motivation to kind of have a really shitty month and come back in and be ready to kill it like the next week is, that's really what we look for at our current stage, where we're kind of a Series B stage, where we're kind of in growth mode. We need brains, and we definitely want like kind of humility, but really someone resilient who doesn't need someone to kick their ass to come in on a Monday. They're just like intrinsically motivated to like succeed. They work great in startups where a lot of you will have quite flat organizations where like you open with, you don't want to manage all the time. You have to have that in their personality.
Do you mind if I jump in on that? Because I think you use a couple words that I really like, humility and talent and so forth. And I think that that is a real challenge, because I think, to your point, it seems obvious that you should just go with like, the person with the great resume and all sort of stuff. But I think too often companies get trapped in this idea of like, we're going to hire anybody that just brings incremental value.
Yeah.
And if they add to the value to the team, they're going to be good. But if you have a really good team, you can work with anybody, no matter how shitty they are, and make them work, because the rest of your team can compensate.
Yeah.
But once you sort of like, if you have A people, you can work with anyone. But if you start hiring B people, they start getting threatened by each other, and so they only want to work with C people.
Yeah, totally.
So it's like, like A people hire A people, whereas B people hire C people, and it's kind of maintain this high talent density. And so I think the comment I wanted to make on that was that, so yes, there's a huge pool of people that can do the work, and there's a subset of that pool that can do the work and is actually like really naturally talented. But I think you have to go further and say like, what fraction of them actually have ambition for their own lives, that actually they're going to bring this passion, so you can say, get back on a Monday instead going, and not because they care so much about your problem domain, but because they've mapped this job onto their long-term ambition. And I would say the final thing, and the word that I like the most, is humility. And being able to do all those things and still recognize the limits of your knowledge. I think having all of these is really hard. I think what doesn't make the list is experience. The thing that most companies value the most, I think, is actually the least valuable. Like, experience just means you didn't get fired. Everyone gets experienced eventually if you just rack up enough hours. But I'd say the hard thing is getting people who are incredibly valuable despite all these other characteristics, and experience is just kind of a wash.
Well, how do you then, so how do you, when you're interviewing, when you're recruiting, it's easy to look at the credentials, it's easy to look at this person as a star engineer, but how do you qualify something, the humility aspect of it, and do you get to know that person over a series of several months? I mean, it seems like a difficult thing to do.
I think the credential just lies. I mean, like, dude, resumes don't say anything. They're just pointless. We don't even look at resumes. We'd prefer people not to give them to us, because it's just basically, chest thumping. And it's like, the only thing I ask a candidate is, what do you want to do with the rest of your life, and how can Expensify help? And I want to hear that you a good answer, because most people are like, what I want to do is eventually become like a CTO or something. It's like, that is not a impressive goal. Or it's like, I was like, what do you want to do on your deathbed, looking back over your life? What is the greatest accomplishment you want to achieve in your life? What is the biggest problem you want to solve? And I want to have an answer to that. And not that you actually have a very clear plan, but at least try, at least have something. But if you have no idea what you want to do with your life, what makes me think that you're going to have a great idea what to do in my company? It's like, your life is way more important than my company to you. And so show me that you care about yourself, and then maybe I'm open to believing you care about my company.
Is it different for senior hires? Because one of the challenges, so we run a stock photo company, and early we raised our first venture money, and a couple of the first people we hired were like, all right, we're going to go get a couple senior people from like Shutterstock and Getty, and they're going to bring this industry expertise. So this idea of like not looking at CVs and them not mattering and experience not mattering, which resonates with me a lot, because the people that we've had success with are the ones that have come in young, kind of grown organically inside of our culture. But are there exceptions based on
Senior people are the worst. Just the worst. What's that? I mean, senior people are awful. Because okay, imagine everyone's like, oh, we're going to hire this really awesome guy who's going to come join my startup. It's like, if they're that awesome, why are they joining your shitty startup?
Why are you available?
It's like, clearly, if you're, it's like...
It goes for co-founders, too.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, I think you have to have, like the really amazing people are those, it's like, you have to catch them so early in their career, because if they're super amazing, they're gone. They're never going to touch them again. They're never going to be hunting for jobs and things like this. And so anyone, you look at there's this huge raft of people out there that are sort of prey upon startups. And they look at their resume, which is super thick. It's like 2 years VP of blah, 3 years VP of blah. And it's always coming in just after they raised money, and just before they failed, or just after they succeeded. Like, these are a huge industry of people who've never created value in their entire lives and never will, but they profit handsomely from it.
And your boards, when you get to the stage when you have a board, they'll push you towards them. You'll have a bad month where the team you kind of grew and mentored, just have a bad month and it will statistically happen. Your board will come in and say, hey, there's this VP.
This guy I know.
They've been at Airbnb for 12 months and it
only
will
have to give
happen.
him 5% of the company.
Yeah.
What a steal.
And
it's like, fuck that guy.
And you have to be able to, no, yeah, so you have to push back on your board sometimes to be like, no, like, sometimes you can bring in new talent, but it doesn't have to be the vanity hire who on LinkedIn looks amazing, but doesn't move the needle. You don't see them after 5 and...
Yeah, at Expensify, we hire no senior people, or none of the senior people that we've hired have worked out. Everyone we've hired has been fresh out of
glad I'm not
college.
alone.
Yeah, so it's like, everyone we've hired and everyone we've promoted internally has been juniors straight out of college, and they are fucking amazing because they have no idea what's not possible. No one's told them that you can't do that particular thing. And so they're like, oh, that mountain's in the way, let me just move that aside. And it's like, oh, what, you did that thing no one else can do? It's like, yeah, it wasn't that hard.
With respect, does that say something about you as a CEO, though, too? Because you probably want to wire them to fit the way you think.
Sure, I mean, you have to build a company that's built
you must hire people that
around
challenge you, too.
Yeah, I mean, but I'm awesome, so that's easy. No, I would say, but mainly it's just about trying to find people who have passion for their lives, align that passion for this moment in their lives around your company, and then try to get out of the way as much as possible, accept that they're going to probably fuck up a bunch, but everyone fucks up a bunch. Make sure that you can sort of survive whatever mistakes they have, and make sure the mistakes are educational. And then, like, everything's super fun along the way.
I'll move to Matt, but so you've hired, I imagine, senior people that just didn't work out.
Yeah.
How long has it been? About 8 years or so?
Yeah, I started the company in
Expensify?
2008,
Yeah.
7.
And for that reason, you've hired people that were hot shots or whoever.
Yeah, and none of them are here anymore.
Okay. Matt, what's been your experience, too, as these last few years with your company?
I share a lot of this, but I guess something that's a little bit of a different direction as I think back early on. I'm thinking about my relationship with the team. I'm a first-time venture founder, so 4 or 5 years ago I was sitting in an audience like this. I remember listening to Phil from Evernote give some talk and just feeling like, I have no idea what the fuck I'm doing. I'm never going to figure this out. Like, oh, these guys seem so impressive, and so I think from my first 2-3 years building a team, I felt like I had to fake it. Like, I felt like I had to walk in and act in front of the employees, or even my co-founders, like I had it figured out. And it's just not the case at all. I think we all walk around at times feeling like imposters because nobody goes and gets a degree in being a startup founder or a startup CEO or whatever. And the job is being described as basically just being like really over your head with major challenges in front of you all the time. And a whole team of a whole startup team, the job of that team is to stare intense challenges in the face and try to figure them out. So there's at no point do you ever feel like, oh, I got this. Like and as soon as you do, like 30 days later, something changes. So for me, the big shift happened realizing I hit a point where I just couldn't fake it anymore, where we had hit a really tough time as a company. We had gone through layoffs. We were trying to figure out how to re-energize the team and find our footing. And I was just exhausted. And so I felt like I had no option. I was either going to quit and go do something else or figure out a different way of working and being with the team. And so for my own survival, I decided I need to work in a place where I can show up and be myself and like be honest and like cry in a meeting once in a while or like let them know that like I got some shit going on with my ex-wife that's got me stressed out and so I'm not totally present in this meeting or whatever the case may be. But it had the weirdest effect because like one, it became a place where like I go to work now with a dozen people that are some of my closest friends and we talk about real shit. But it also, to my surprise, like it totally changed the team. Like it totally energized the team. All these things that we had thought were problems for a long time, where we had issues with people's like with retention or work ethic or whatever. All of a sudden, the entire team kind of it became a place where other people mimicked my behavior. So they would show up, and when they had stuff they didn't understand, they could talk about it. When they had stress at home with their partner, they could talk about it. And all of a sudden, things that were getting in people's way, like those stress points or things that they couldn't figure out in their job, when they start communicating about them, the team pulls together, and it's just really magical. So my entire way of being with a team of employees has completely changed.
How many employees do you have now?
We're 12 now.
So that probably works as a startup, at least when you're a small team. When you start scaling, and hopefully you're...
I think it always works. I mean, we've done 12, we've done 55. I mean, we were a 55-person company doing $500,000 in revenue, and we're a 12-person company now doing $3 million in revenue. We've done all of it. Like, so I I think it's an excuse. I think this idea that like you can't be authentic, or you can't be real with your team, or you can't build a workplace where people can really be themselves, the kind of place that we all want to work at scale, I think is bullshit. I think it's
completely agree with that. There's like this sort of, we sort of accept as a truism that like a startup, you start off with these really amazing people and things are fun and energetic and all that, but then you got to grow up and you got to hire some, adults to do this thing for real, and then they hire a bunch of super shitty people, and that's just like and then eventually you go on to do it again, and like it has to be this cycle sort of thing, and then we create this sort of we celebrate like the serial entrepreneur. I've done like 20 startups, and it's like, you fucked up 20 times?
You know who's not a serial entrepreneur?
Yeah, it's like
Bezos.
Yeah, exactly. It's like,
Jobs.
dude, just make an amazing company and just make it bigger. It can be awesome. Like those happen if you make it a point to happen.
Naomi, do you?
So I want to add to that.
I know you want to.
So for employees specifically, when you're hiring full time, I get that. But a lot of times when you are hiring contractors, I prefer the ones with experience because they're
Contractors are very different, yeah.
Yeah, it's very different.
Because those are mercenaries.
I'm sorry?
They're mercenaries, yeah.
Yeah, they are. And I want them on my team.
Yeah.
And when they're really good, I'm going to do everything I can to keep them full time. So yeah, it's different. So for people who are having a hard time hiring and who are using contractors, at that point, you'll probably want somebody who's much more experienced.
And there's a related learning there too. We outsource whatever the hell we can. Like we have a 12-person team in the Philippines that's outsourced most of our marketing efforts. We have a core growth team, but most of our marketing stuff is outsourced. Like, if you can think about a startup, the objective being disproportionate impact with minimal resources, why would you not, right? As soon as when you can figure out things that you can take and put over here with people that are specialists in that and mercenaries, and you can A/B test them against another. We have 3 people that do search engine marketing for us, and every month the firm that doesn't live up, we swap out.
Yes.
Really hard to maintain culture if you're doing that with your internal growth team, but really easy to do it when you can take parts of the business and pull them outside.
Game of Thrones for marketing.
Shame. I want to see the pikes with the heads out front of the previous SEO firms.
How have you, when you're a founder, you're getting tons of advice. And, I guess we're dispensing some advice here, but hopefully it's through these mistakes that were made. When you're in those early days, you have the idea, you think you have the market, but then people are telling you to do this or that, and you're going in 5 different directions. Can you talk about that? There has to be, I think every founder must go through that when you're second guessing yourself and you're thinking, maybe I should go this route, and maybe you're just doing too many products. Who wants to take
Yeah, I mean, somewhat you've got to pull back from the noise. Like, like you said, I was in conferences like this 4 years ago, and you definitely first don't want to build a distance between the people on stage or the people advising you and yourselves. Like, there is no distance. Like, we're all in this together, and just because someone goes on stage and tells you it was inevitable for them, kind of like it's not true. So I think that I moved here from the East Coast and obviously from London originally, and I think when I moved here for the first year, it was so intoxicating that you read TechCrunch, you read all the tech blogs, you go to the tech conferences. We launched at TechCrunch Disrupt. Like, we were a tech darling for the first year, and actually all of it is kind of like important, but it's kind of bullshit at the end of the day if you don't retrench and like focus on like the 1 or 2 things that actually matter to your business and go and execute them with your team, whether they're mercenaries or like kind of junior kids you're going to bet on, or you go super senior, that actually none of it matters. And blocking the noise off, whether it's your board member sending you the latest TechCrunch article about a feature your competitor built that in the short term you're just devastated, even though it has no impact on your long-term outcome, you're just devastated because you're so competitive. And then just knowing that, like, pull back, it doesn't matter, like, let them do it. If you focus on your 2 numbers that get you to the next stage, that's all that matters, and what your competitors are doing, even if it's tangentially related to what you're doing, it's irrelevant. So block the noise out. We live in an incredibly noisy place for kind of tech journalism. No offense to the Wall Street Journal, love you guys.
Always read his.
Don't read the Wall Street Journal. Do read the Wall Street Journal.
Buy the subscription, right? Yeah, it's not for anyone. But block it out, and that is a really important skill as a CEO, whether it's your board, whether it's journalists, whether it's your friends reminding you of all your competition, be able to block it out.
And it's not just you, it's the team, right?
Yeah.
So the 3 jobs of a CEO are to hold the vision, recruit the team, and provide that team resources, which is capital and clarity. So that clarity piece, and this is me giving advice to my early self, but whenever I sit with a pre-product market fit team, and they tell me about how they're spending time, it just makes me want to pull my fucking hair out. Like, don't go to conferences and listen to people sitting on panels telling you what to do. Like, if you think about it.
Don't read journalism, don't go to conferences. What are we doing here?
I mean, but really, like, pre-product, there's 2 stages, right? There's pre-product market fit. Pre-product market fit, all that fucking matters is finding product market fit. Everything else is a means to an end. So you have this idea of what your business is going to be. There's a bunch of risks, things that you might be wrong about. And you need to pick the 1 or 2 things that you're going to go de-risk next. And you should have just on your whiteboard, here are the 10 biggest risks of my company, and orient the team around the next biggest 1 or 2 risks, right? Until you have product market fit, which is a little squishy. But at product market fit, you have a real problem, a real solution, a way to acquire customers, and a way to make money that builds a sustainable business. And then once you're there, even when you're in growth mode, like we're really focused on scaling right now. We have 1,200 customers, 12 employees, $3 million in revenue. We're early, growing, but we do 2 things a quarter, and that's it. Yeah. Like our entire team of 12, even now, 5 years in, with $12 million raised, we do 2 things per quarter. So how many do you think that you should be doing before that? And the answer is very few. And most, I would posit that most startups burn out. People talk about not being able to raise capital or teams falling apart and co-founder issues and all of this stuff. But most people burn out because of time. Like, and really they're just trying to do way too many things with way too few resources. And as a startup, the one thing that you have that the incumbents don't is focus. And the ability to move quickly.
And creativity, I want to add to that. You can't lose your creativity. So once you focus on the problem that you have to solve, and you're devoting all of your resources to fix it, don't lose your creativity to fix it too. Because that's also something that as startup entrepreneurs you have, that your incumbents don't.
So I would, as your fellow therapist here, I would love to go for hours on this. We have just a few minutes, but I would like just to go down the line, just briefly tell me about, because everyone goes through this, that moment, that kind of holy shit moment, when maybe you just started panicking, when something was going wrong or haywire. What was it over the last few years? There has to be something minor or even big.
Today or
this
some
week?
point?
In this panel right now. I to put you on the spot, we can go back this way.
I'm happy to be on the spot. I'm fine with it. So our team is remote. We all usually work from our own homes and we video conference in with each other. So my low point wasn't really a very low point because we're profitable. But the low point was that I'm a very extroverted person and I didn't see my team as much as I want to in person. So for me, my low point was just I realized, oh, I might be a little lonely because it's like 10 p.m. I just finished work, and my team's gone. So that's when I would just go ahead and like go to a concert or go do something that feeds my creativity, so I can come back the next day and give it my all again. So that's my low point. I know that there's probably many more low points that other people
Disaster, Matt, go. No,
we've had so many we're fucked, it's over moments that if you go to gettingreal.io, there's a whole blog about all of the dozens of times that our company has almost died and what we've learned from it. But the one maybe most relatable, we were in an incubator. We were 30 days in, realized that we had no product market fit. We had 60 days till demo day. We had 90 days of cash left. I was going to have a baby 30 days later and was trying to buy a house. Whoa. Wow. And so in 60 days, we pivoted the company, figured out how to get actually our first 20,000 customers after 8 months of like disaster, and raised a little bit of money and stayed alive. But that has happened like 10 or 12 times. So,
wow. And you're still alive?
So you just need to keep going. Like, you will have so many of these moments, you just need to not quit.
So I'm pretty scared now because I had a board meeting just before this, did this, and then my wife's going into labor in about 24 hours, so I'm in the zone right now. But my lowest, I think my lowest point, and there have been honestly like dozens, and we've raised $40 million. So we've raised a lot of money, and there have been so many low moments on that route. Yeah. For me, it was just while we were raising our Series A, when we'd only raised 1.7 million. Before that, I got on a plane from Boston to San Francisco, and one of our competitors had just launched this rent payment product that we knew didn't work from an economic perspective, didn't fit our model. But like, to my point about getting distracted, I got on the plane, had 6 hours to stew in like a horribly turbulent flight about my competitor who just launched something quite sexy that even though it didn't fit our model, was going to come up in all of my Series A pitches, and like it kind of threw me. So ignore the noise. It didn't matter. We raised. It was fine. It's always fine if you've delivered the numbers.
Yeah, and so I would say the point that was probably the most difficult for me at Expensify was everything's up and to the right, everything's great, with the exception of we couldn't explain why, and we were running out of money because we were just trapped into this Silicon Valley mentality of like, you just keep raising and spending money just because it's what you do, sort of thing. And I'm like, but it's fine, everything's great. There's always gonna be more money available so long as things are great, right? And I went into this round, and I just could not fucking close this round, even though it's like, business looks really cool and all that, but you just can't explain why, and why are you trying to raise money again? And I'm like, I'm not even really sure.
Seems like the right thing to do.
And but then I'm like realizing it's like, oh shit, I can't close this round, and I'm also not profitable, and I'm going to be out of money soon. Yeah. And then realizing there is no cavalry coming to our rescue. We just need to get profitable right now.
And it's literally on you. There's nowhere to hide. That's the terrible truth about being the CEO. It's like you can't hide behind anyone.
Yeah, exactly. But so yeah, it was a very, very difficult moment, but I probably would all agree. It's like when you get through to the other side, there is such a bright end to that tunnel. And like I would say the period after that moment was one of the highest morale periods of the company. It was tough. We all pulled together. We cut back salaries by 15%, and we stopped all hiring, and we just worked super fucking hard, and it was amazing. And it changed the entire culture for the better.
Awesome way to stop it right there. A positive note. Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That was cool.